Welcome in, everyone. Episode number 3, Business Relationship Sports with CA and KJ. We're here. Good to see you again, my guy.
Always good to see you.
No doubt. So today we're going to get into some sports-related topics. We'll get into a little bit of relationship-related, and then we'll finish off with some business-related. So jumping straight into it, WNBA Championship just passed. Big congratulations to the New York Liberty. They pulled it off for the first time in history after going 0-5 in previous WNBA championships. They finally got over the hump. So Jonquel Jones, Sabrina Ionescu, Breanna Stewart, and the whole crew, they finally pulled it off. But there was definitely some controversy around the game and the games in general. So a lot of really close games down the stretch. There were times the Liberty were up big, and then the Minnesota Lynx came back and ended up either tying it or taking over. Like game 2, and then in game 3 you have the opposite situation where the Lynx are up and then the Liberty crawl back in and Sabrina Ionescu hits just an unbelievable game winner. So let's start there in game 3 where Sabrina Ionescu had a really big shot at the end of the game, a very Steph Curry-esque, very Kobe Bryant-esque. A lot of people were commenting on it around the country. So what were your thoughts on the shot?
Oh, that was an amazing shot, but also I heard a lot of people saying like, oh, well, it was kind of her coming out party. I'm like, it wasn't her coming out party. She's been a really good player for a long time. I mean, one of the few players that's got her own shoe. Like, I got the shoe. The shoe is pretty sick. And I'm like, this is what she's supposed to be doing.
Yeah. So you have a young lady like Sabrina Ionescu who is hitting a big shot in a big moment. So good for branding, right? Like you said, it brings up so many conversations. I was listening to some of the other talk shows and whether it was the host or some of the guests talking about going around the world and hearing guests have conversations about what shoes they're going to buy. And it's interesting for them and for me to hear as well. There's a lot of young boys now who are going to get that shoe, going to get a women's shoe. What time in history do you remember that ever happening where men are going out actively seeking a woman's shoe? Is there like a time you can remember?
No, that's never happened. And also, I don't even remember times when anybody's even making a women's shoe in the first place. So, I mean, when it comes down to it, it's like, if it's popular, if it's comfortable, if it's good to play in, like, people are going to gravitate to it. This is social media age. So whatever's popular, people are going to move to.
No doubt. And so you have a situation like that where the shoe's cool. A lot of people like the look of it. They like the feel of it. It reminds them of the Kobe's, coming out. Yeah. And it just shows, like, how much of a time right now we see a transition. We see the transition from back when you and I were playing. It was literally Title IX days. Like, that was like 2008, 2009, right around there. I'll never forget being in high school and hearing about this whole concept of Title IX and what that means. For those who don't know what Title IX is, that was essentially when collegiate sports decided that there needed to be as many women's scholarships as there are men's scholarships and as many roster spots for both
Equality.
to try to make it more equal.
Yeah.
And my biggest challenge with that whole thing was just the whole concept of men's football, right? So it's not technically men's football. Now you see women on the football team here and there, but football at the time, I believe, had some like 85 scholarships, and
it's pretty wild. If I'm correct, it's somewhere in between like 20 and 30 scholarships a year. So then that obviously cuts down the amount of men's scholarships that you have in other sports.
Right, which you and I felt that in the men's volleyball type situation.
100%.
So women's basketball 15 scholarships, women's volleyball 12 scholarships back then, and then men's volleyball having like 4.5. So of course, NCAA is always going to gravitate where the money is. You have the Power 5 sports. There's the reason they're called the Power 5 sports between football, basketball, baseball. I believe it's women's basketball, and then one other sport, maybe soccer, something like that. But with the Power 5 sports, a lot of people out there think that those sports control the market, when really at most schools it's literally the football team. So the football team brings in the money. The other Power 5 sports kind of stay afloat, and the rest of the sports lose money. And then that's kind of the cyclical thing that happens. But now things have switched, obviously, with the NIL and everything that's happening there, which we'll get into. But with the WNBA, you have the Sabrina Ionescu shot. It creates waves all around the country. It's a big deal. It puts the New York Liberty in a situation to be able to win. But then game 4, it goes back down to the wire. The Lynx are ahead on their home floor. It goes down to the wire, and they're not able to close this time around. And so going to that last game, what things did you pay attention to, or what things were you looking for even heading into that 5th game in the deciding game of the WNBA Championship?
Obviously, I was under full expectation that Sabrina was going to do really well. Stewart, and then obviously Jones. She's freaking huge. She just she bully balls people. for sure. So that's literally just pushing people under the basket and scoring. So I was expecting those three to play really well, and then it ended up being a completely different narrative where Stewart and Jones actually played really well, and then Sabrina ended up probably having one of her worst nights. But, I mean, it is what it is. You can't play your best every single night.
Yeah, for me, I took the lesson, and this is something, that comes up in a lot of the mentality work that I do, but Sabrina Ionescu was not playing well, obviously. She goes into the second half and hadn't made a shot, and then finally makes a free throw at one point. But the thing that was interesting is she literally kept shooting, and watching her, there wasn't this hesitation. There wasn't this thought of, tonight's not my night, let me pass it off. Yeah. And something I explain to young athletes a lot is this whole concept of understanding timing, but also understanding who you want to be. So it was clear to me, and this is where I was really impressed by Sabrina Ionescu, the whole world could watch and see that what was happening to Klay Thompson in that play-in game for the Warriors versus the Kings, where Klay Thompson went 0 of 11 or 0 of 10 or whatever the case. And Klay Thompson kept shooting. Yeah. And they ended up losing, but I remember watching that game and feeling like that's impressive that even though he's not making shots, he's going to continue to shoot because he understands if he stops shooting, that's a message to his team that he's defeated and it's not going to work out. Yeah. And so the only way you have even an opportunity to bring light to your team and make them feel like things are going to go well is to continue to do what you normally do. So there is such thing as pressing and going too hard and going outside of what you normally do. But if you could look at film from when Klay Thompson scores 34 and a quarter in that game, if it looks symmetrical to what you're attempting and what you're trying to get going, for me, it's green light. And I look at Sabrina Ionescu the same. She's had plenty of games where she has 19 to 20 attempts. So for me, it's not improper or incorrect for her to continue to shoot. And it sends messaging to the rest of the team we're going to keep pressing the gas pedal. We're going to keep pushing towards this. And they were down by, I think, 10 or 15 at one point. So to come back and be able to win, and finally she hits a three in a pretty pivotal moment to pull them up 3 or 4 points. I think that's a really big message that young athletes and older athletes should really take is if you know your team relies on you and her role is to be the number 2 scorer or maybe the number 3 scorer, you can't let off the gas pedal or there's a chance the rest of the team,
will
falls
drop down
mentally,
with you.
right?
You got to believe that next shot's going to drop.
For sure.
That's just how it is.
For sure. So there's a lot of naysayers out there who would say, oh, if it's not going for you, you need to stop shooting. You need to start passing it off or whatever the case. So, of course, a player like her who's Mrs. Triple-Double in the WNBA, she needs to look for opportunities to pass, look for opportunities to get rebounds, that kind of thing. But people who haven't played professional sports maybe don't understand as well, or maybe they do. Yeah. But the moment you show your habits are different, that's when the opponent pounces. Mm-hmm. You have to be willing to show your habits are the same. And if the opponent lays off because you're missing, just keep taking your opportunities, and eventually they're going to go down. Mm-hmm. So the MVP of the whole deal, Jonquel Jones, there's a lot of people who had heard of her before, and there's a lot of people who hadn't heard of her. So now as women's basketball gains in popularity, Caitlin Clark, like we've talked about in the past, has really helped build it, and get the motion going. But now these other players who've been around, they're holding it. Every time that they turn on a game, there's more and more viewership. They're breaking records of viewership. They're breaking records of attendance. It's really impressive to see where women's basketball and women's sports in general are going. So what is your whole feeling on where the WNBA is going to go? To you, is it going to continue to rise and build and become a sport that's up here with the big dog sports or the big dog media sports in terms of viewership and attendance? Or do you feel like we're in a flash in the pan? What's your feeling?
Right now, I feel like we're kind of like a splash in the pan. I feel as though the Caitlin Clark situation is literally driving it right now, and it brought a lot of popularity in on this season, and I want to see if it's going to be kept, because I'm still hearing a lot of things about profitability and, hey, well, we need to make these type of changes to make it more entertaining, which I think possibly needs to happen, but I don't see it right now being something that's going to hold up. I could see it getting here and then kind of leveling off at that place until something else happens and then rises again.
Mm-hmm. So you have, this concept is really important to me whenever you look at basically trying to hedge a bet. You're trying to figure out what's going to happen in the future. In order to figure out what's going to happen in the future, the best place to search is the recent past, right? So if you look at the NBA, for example, which is different because it is men, it is a while back that it got popular, it's been on TV for a while, more boys have played basketball, historically than women. But as there's more and more girls playing, there's more and more people getting involved in NCAA. There's more and more people getting involved. WNBA is going to add a franchise, that kind of stuff. Caitlin Clark needs to be viewed, in my opinion, the same way that Magic and Bird were viewed, or Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese, Caitlin Clark and Juju Watkins, these type of people need to be viewed the way that Magic and Bird are viewed. Paige Beckers, let me not forget, she's a stud. And the same thing as Michael Jordan. So when Magic and Bird came into the league, the NBA did a great job making a concerted effort to say, we're going to make you two the face of the league, even as rookies. It doesn't matter what's been going on. We've been on tape delay. This has not been going great. We've got great players. Kareem's been here. Wilt's been here. We're going to pull you two up because you have marketability. Yeah. And the NBA saw that, whether it was at the time, the commissioner, whether it was the TV, whether it was David Stern, whether it was whoever, they saw that and they made it a thing. We're going to put you in commercials against each other. We're going to put you on the court against each other. We're going to start making your games primetime. And the WNBA needs to make sure that they're very smart about that same concept. And so you've seen, obviously, Caitlin Clark has gotten the Indiana Fever to be on TV when they were irrelevant last year.
Unheard of.
And that's great. And she's in the first team All-NBA. She's in the All-Star game, all these things. But everything really has to be pushed that way. So you have to look at the fact, like, Michael Jordan, fresh into the NBA, where did he go in an Olympic year? He went to the Olympics, right? Of
course, you got to take.
And he goes, and he wins gold. And that helps build the cachet. And any misstep you take can kick your progress down the road for a while. So Caitlin Clark has had all this fire and all this buzz, people showing up in the arenas with her jersey on and this kind of thing. And there's no player who's ever had that. There's not one player who's ever had that kind of notoriety. Even Diana Taurasi, who's like probably the most historical in the WNBA, the Maya Moores, the Lisa Leslies, nobody's had this much attention. And so if you're the WNBA, if you really want to be marketable and profitable, like you said, you've got to like fan that flame and like make sure that keeps coming.
But once again, there being even that situation of what you were saying about Diana Taurasi and the other really high-level WNBA players, I think there's the other side of where they're trying to actually hold that down because they aren't getting what Caitlin Clark got.
Right.
And so I think that creates another problem of why it's not going to rise the way that it should, because the really good players aren't getting behind her. They're more of like going against her.
Right. And so in the NBA, if you look at a symmetrical situation with like Anthony Edwards type, right? Anthony Edwards took the world by storm last year. He's going to the playoffs. He's dunking on people, wins dunk of the year, wins block of the year, whatever the case. Gets on the All-NBA team, makes the All-Star game, then goes to the playoffs, beats Kevin Durant, who he previously states is like his idol. Then goes and beats the defending champions. Like, he's got all this momentum. And then, they end up losing to the Mavericks, probably because he made an inappropriate comment to Kyrie Irving. That wasn't a surprise. But nonetheless, he has got all this steam, goes into an Olympic year, and wisely, again, the NBA, even he wasn't even a starter in the Olympics, but so much promotion over him. Like, oh, this is what he did in the preseason games. He was the leading scorer. Oh, he's coming first off the bench. We're making highlights for him. We're making video and movies around him. Like, there's this new Starting Five on Netflix, and he's in there with, like, LeBron and Jason Tatum and these other guys. And for the NBA, they understand now because they've been doing this. Hey, marketability is important. Jokic, he's been the MVP, and he's the best player, and he deserves it, but he's not the most marketable person. So we're going to make the face of the league marketable people. LeBron James, marketable. Anthony Edwards, marketable.
Big personalities.
Yeah, they get it right away. But then on the back end, it's the same. Like you said, the other players are lifting this guy up. The other players, it's respect. Even though he's in people's faces and he's talking junk and he's saying pretty wild stuff.
And dunking on you.
Exactly. But these other players are like, man, that guy's the truth. Yes, he could be the face of the league. Yes, he's on the come. Even his competition, even the Shai Gilgeous-Alexanders, even the Jason Tatums, even the Lucas, the people in that same boat, it's all love. So the women's side, it's not that everybody is this way, but the few, like you said, who are at the top of the food chain, if they want their numbers to come up and they want their notoriety to come up, you got
to get behind.
You have to lift all the boats. Rising tide lifts all boats. So see this flame that Caitlin Clark has. Hey, we want her in the commercial with us. Yeah. We want her at the event with us. We want her to be front row. Get her to the game, to the NBA Finals, WNBA Finals. Like, if people would have known she was at the people would have known she was at the WNBA Finals front row, guarantee, like, ticket prices could have probably gone another $200 up. Easily. So that's the thing, is like continue to work on that marketability, because we are in a stage, like you said, it's social media era. Branding, marketing for the professional leagues is very important. So transitioning that into the NFL, right now, there's a whole lot happening in the NFL, starting with our Cowboys looking tragic. Woo! Yeah, it's challenging to be a Cowboys fan right now. To the point where I had an athlete come in here the other day, and she was trying to hide the fact that she's a Cowboys fan. I said, "Do you watch NFL football?" She said, "Yeah." I'm not going to tell you who my team is. And I said, "Okay, who's your team?"
Yeah,
she's like,
tell me.
The Cowboys. And I said, "Oh, I have to tell you, I'm a Cowboys fan too, naturally." And she's like, "Oh, really?" Change the tune. But it's pretty challenging to be a Cowboys fan. They're getting waxed right now. What's the situation?
I just don't think that we're doing anything good.
I'm looking, the offensive line is every time I look up, Dak Prescott is under pressure. Like our defense. Well, the questionable offense is leading into the defensive situation, obviously. So if your offense is questionable, that means they come off the field very quickly, which means in turn your defense has to stay on the field longer. And then obviously they get tired, they give up more big plays. Yes. So I think that's kind of just rolling into each other. Mm-hmm. And I think we just need to have better protection.
Yeah. This is something I'm starting to understand about football. I did not play football. You did play football. So we defer to you on these situations. But I'm learning about football that it's very camaraderie built, right? And that's not something when I was younger I really had a handle on. I used to believe, football is essentially like you have 1, 2, 3, 4 star players, maybe 2 on offense, 2 on defense, or 3 on offense, 3 on defense. Yeah. And then as long as you have some other hardworking people around, you could be a good team. Yeah. But now as I watch NFL, as I watch college, as I watch even high school, and I work with football players now in mentality, I'm learning, because they're teaching me, you could almost peg at the beginning of the season how a team's going to do, just based on out of the gate how they are about camaraderie, how they are about togetherness, how they are about taking responsibility as opposed to deflecting it. Yeah. And so I watched the Cowboys early in this season, and what happened in those first couple games, like you had some of the guys, John and other people, pointing blame, it's their fault. Well, guys aren't doing this, guys aren't doing that. And in other sports, you see that, and there's usually like a dip for maybe 2 or 3 games, and there can be this cyclical thing. But it's like the stars will win out past that. Yeah. And in football, that doesn't seem to be a thing. And so we have 2 examples of that. The Cowboys were like tearing at each other early, even back when Micah Parsons was healthy. Mm-hmm. They were pointing blame. It's these guys, it's those guys. And then all of a sudden you see you're getting smashed by 40, 50 points, But you look at the Chiefs, who you could blame it on injuries, right? Everybody in football, well, there's injuries and there's not. Micah Parsons and Lawrence and these people. Look at the Chiefs. Yeah. The Chiefs lost their number 1 receiver. Hollywood Brown's not playing. Their number 1 running back. And I believe they had one more injury to a defensive person recently. And they're undefeated with their star quarterback playing his worst year thus far since his rookie year. Mm-hmm. But it's camaraderie. There's no finger pointing. It's all, hey, I'm going to take responsibility. I'm going to do my job. We're going to find the areas where we're highlighted, and we're going to find the areas where we're good, and we're going to expose you. And if we have to grind you out and win late, we will. If we can get out to a head start and then, keep the lead, we will.
And there's expectation, though.
Yeah.
So there's expectation of a standard, and they expect to keep the standard no matter who's on the field.
Exactly. So what's your experience with football in terms of what I just said? Like, seeing that from the high school level that you played, or being a fan of the NFL or college, like, what is it in the football locker room, whether it's coaches to players or positional coaches or like what they do off the field or on the field? What is it about football that creates that?
I think just from when I was playing, like, we had a really good head coach, and the head coach was all about team camaraderie, and occasionally you have some guys, you have some issues, and they handle that issue in practice. You guys get after each other in practice, but it was coaches making sure that everybody was accountable, and then it was players making sure that everybody was accountable. Like, everybody was trying to play hard. They were also trying to play hard together. There was a thing where, like, everybody had to run to the ball, especially on the defensive side. Like, no matter what was going on, everybody had to run to the ball. It was all about camaraderie. It was all about staying together. It was all about playing together. You know what I mean? Yeah. And on top of that, it's super hard to do just because the teams are the biggest teams. Right. Like, we're as big or bigger than a track team. Right? So it's hard to get all those players bought in, but if you get most of the players bought in, the rest of the players have to buy in or they got to leave the team.
Right.
you know?
Yeah, and I'm seeing the same exact thing from every level. Like, I'm becoming a football fan. My big thing with football is always like how dangerous it is. Yet there's plenty of things you can look at in life that are dangerous, and people will always bring you stats. For example, X amount of car accidents happen every day. So are you saying we shouldn't drive? Instead, we should ride bikes or take metro or whatever? It's like you can always point to something, you know, that's dangerous. The fact is, it's a choice, and I've come to realize like playing football or not playing football is a choice. Unless you're like under 18 and your parents are literally forcing you. Yeah. For everybody else who's playing in college or playing in the pros, it's a choice. Yeah. And so if you choose that, you choose that. Just like if somebody chooses to ride a motorcycle without a helmet on, they choose that. So with football, you know, I'm becoming a fan and I'm seeing the art in it. I'm seeing like the strategy, which I'm all about. I'm all about strategy and mentality and IQ and that kind of thing. And as I watch the Chiefs, you know, Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, I go, he does just have a knack for keeping the team, you know, like it's all going to work out. It's all going to work out.
I'm going to get it done.
And that was my MO, you know, as a setter. When I learned to like really command a court, I wasn't the most talented touch of the ball. I wasn't the best jumper, the most electric arm, but I learned how to like make others feel like, oh no, it's going to work out our way. It's going to go our way. Just keep going this direction. It's going to work out our way, or make this shift, make that shift. So when I watch a team like the Jets right now who aren't doing well, I go, there's a disconnect. I can see it from a distance. I can go, there's a disconnect because all it takes is one or two big actions to mess up something for months. So Aaron Rodgers, he made a mistake, in my opinion, by going, I'm not going to show up to the optional or the mandatory team camp or whatever it is.
Coming off an injury.
And like already you have people go, oh, it's like that?
Yeah.
And then the protection is a little less aggressive for you. The defense is a little bit less apt to work hard for you. Like, and sometimes it's not even conscious.
Yeah.
It's just subconscious, like, you're not riding for us, so I'm not going to give everything I have,
you're not
for you.
completely bought in.
And whether that's right or wrong, you know, my opinion is athletes shouldn't look at what other athletes do to determine their effort.
Yeah. You
just need to decide what type of effort you're going to give. But this is the reality that I'm looking at. When I watch, I go, that's where that comes from. Yeah. Like, literally you showing up for 7 days of team camp or 14 days of team camp, your season could be 5-2. I believe that, as opposed to like the flip. Or if you look at a situation like where these wide receivers hold out, you know, and it's people don't see, it's their agent, you know, that says, no, we're going to do it this way. We're in this negotiation. The players a lot of times are just kind of waiting, you know, what do you think we should do, you know, taking advice. But the rest of the team, you know, they get affected when they start feeling like, oh, you're prima donna, like you're already making $17 million more than me, and you're not going to show up for the team because you didn't get an extra $500,000. Like, that's the feeling, and that's what creates this part. So the people like Tom Brady, which a lot of people don't remember back to this, like he was taking pay cuts to keep the rosters as were.
Yeah.
And he's the greatest quarterback of all time in a lot of people's eyes. But people don't watch the smooth moves like that. Like Tom Brady has the opportunity to make a bunch of money now, TV, endorsements, ownership, and obviously he played well. But Tom Brady didn't have a crazy level of talent. He didn't have a crazy college career. He wasn't highly touted. He wasn't drafted high. But he had that savvy of like, this is how I'm going to make this thing work, and this is how I'm going to make it go.
Yeah,
and
I
so
need to keep it together.
People aren't learning from history in that way. Like, and that's the thing with sports, with pro sports, you know, that I'm watching. So if I'm hiring a head coach, I'm looking for the Phil Jackson types, the Bill Belichick types, the Greg Popovich types who can maintain discipline, the Nick Sabans who can like maintain discipline, but also have that vision of these are the people who are going to understand how to lead my group, and I'm going to put them at the front. And in the college ranks, that's where I think Deion Sanders understands it. You know, there's a lot of people who don't want to see him win. There's a lot of people who do want to see him win. But when I watch the Shador, when I watch the Travis Hunter, when I watch the team, they have this bravado, right?
Yeah.
You know, okay, no, we're going to come in and dominate. We're going to play well. We're going to play hard. They're saying the right things that football players should say.
Expectations, standards.
But there is this, like, camaraderie amongst the group. Like, when is one time you've ever heard Shador Sanders, like, whine or complain about, like, how much he's getting hit? You know, it's the media. You know, he's getting hit this many times, he's been sacked this many times. Like, I've never heard one person that's like, my guys need to protect me better. You know, you don't hear that. Travis Hunter is supposed to be the best football player in the country. You don't hear him, well, I'm not getting targeted. Well, if they would have gave me the ball, but you hear these things at the next level to the teams. You used to hear Des Bryant pull that stuff all the time, right? Like, well, if I put out the film on him type of situation, like, and that's the thing, you know, if you're looking at pro sports today, there has to be more savvy about how the thing is being put together and like who the people are leading that way.
Yeah, but once again, what's tough about the NFL is the fact that it's the hardest way in the world to get rich.
Yes.
Right? Like, you're talking about literally putting your entire body on the line, your entire life on the line,
Yeah.
right? Like, your entire life on the line in order to make millions. It's the hardest way. So the tough part is you're like trying to manage, like, okay, do we kind of do this as a team, or do I make sure I get mine because I know that I'm not here for that long, right? NFL stands basically for not for long league. Yeah, so it's kind of that counterbalance in the league where it's like, okay, do I sacrifice getting paid so I can hopefully win the Super Bowl, or do I get paid and then maybe we get the Super Bowl, maybe not? And that's a tough one.
In a way, it's literally like the same juxtaposition you get in life, right? It's like the short-term gain and maybe long-term challenge versus like long-term gain with the short-term challenge. So it's not unlike anything else you've had in like business relationships, sports. Like in business, you can try to get rich quick. And if you get rich quick, you're probably going to set yourself up for crazy debt later, or these unforeseen circumstances later, or these like potholes later. And then it flips on you versus like, which we'll talk about, doing certain things now that create something later. In sports, I think there are a lot of people who have this mentality of like, look, I just got to get in. I'm only supposed to be there 3 or 4 years. I got to get my bag and then I'll get out. Well, usually the people, not always, but usually the people who have that mentality, okay, I'm going to go get my bag. I'm in the league 3 years. Fine. Say, just use a round number. They make $5 million. Call it $5 to $7 million. The same mentality is the same going to spend that money. Okay, I'm going to buy the house. I'm going to get the cars. I'm going to pay off my friends here. I'm going to get this. I'm going to get that. And they look up at the end of year number 4 and they go, damn, I have no money.
I don't have anything.
But I set myself up to where my eating habits weren't good, my workout habits weren't good, my relationships with other players weren't good. So I am going to be out of the league. Even if I try to flip it, it's too late that I'm out of the league. And now later I'm working, as a job that I don't want to be doing, for the next 20 to 30 years. Versus a person, for example, like Tom Brady, like we said, and he's top of the food chain. So insert anybody, who's been in the league for 10 years plus, and even outside of quarterbacks, and go, how did you do it? And I guarantee the eating habits are on point. The workout habits are on point. They keep their head down in the weight room, and they're not talking a bunch of junk. They're just like steady, but they're competitive. They're communicative with their coaches. And more than anything, on the front end, they're living almost the same lifestyle that they had before they played sports. You don't really see people like, ooh, I'm crushing the beginning, and the Odell Beckhams, the Des Bryants. I don't just want to use wide receivers. Look at the Ray Rices. Look at like any of the people who are real flashy up front. I'm putting it all out there. I'm making it happen. I need a name. Look at Adrian Peterson, who had a really long career, but now is $12 million plus in debt. Because you just had to I got to have the giraffes and the elephants and the camels, and I got to fly out everybody and put up everybody, as opposed to the people who have their head down, and you look up when they're 60 and you're like, how are you in ownership of 15 companies? Like, when we never even heard your name. Like,
you had the long-term plan. And you kept your head down. Nobody knew about it.
Because I was under the radar. So the same mentality, it works in business, relationships, sports. Like, you can either put your head down, grind on the front end, save, do the right stuff, create the right relationships, and it pays off in the long run. Or on the front end, you can try to grab the whole bag and slide out and think about yourself, and there's going to be nobody for you there later because it was about you, right? It was just about you getting yours back then. So nobody's checking for you later, right?
You got nothing.
So transitioning that into the Ravens, Lamar Jackson is impressive. I will give it to him. I'm a Patrick Mahomes fan because I like his way, not just because he's a multi-time champion or whatever. I like his way, that he goes about it. Lamar Jackson, I don't know if I've seen an athlete like this dude. Strong. He's getting better at throwing the ball, can run like crazy, competitive, fluid, decision maker, and he hasn't been able to get over the hump in the postseason, which is most great players' biggest challenge and where they get held back in the talk of best ever. But just what are your thoughts about, you're a Ravens fan, what are your thoughts about Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, the Baltimore Ravens right now?
Like I said before, Lamar Jackson to me is definitely like Vic 2.0, Michael Vick 2.0, 3.0. Being able to run like Vic, and like I said, I was a fan of him when he was at Louisville, and he was just completely unstoppable. He's fast. And then when he was in college, he wasn't really trying to stay in the pocket. He'd leave. And now he's becoming a pocket passer and a runner when he needs to be. And he's already one of the fastest guys in the league. So you're talking about speed and being able to sit in the pocket and throw. It's pretty rare. So for him, I think he just has to get over that hump. But he's got a ridiculous team around him. The Ravens' defense is still good. He's got one of the best running backs behind him. And he's got like a second running back who, I think it's Hill. He's like super fast. So it's like he's got the team around him. They just got to make the push.
Yeah. And so much of winning in the playoffs comes down to the habits that you practice, in the off season and throughout the year. And there's people at every level. You and I both have a lot of responsibility of teaching youth. But youth have to understand, if you really want to get over the hump in the playoffs, it's about what you do in the off season and the preseason. Yeah. Like, so many people try to prep, like, oh, okay, it's playoffs now. Now I'm going to eat right. It's playoffs now. Yeah. Now I'm going to get my workouts. Now I'm going to start sleeping the right way. Yeah. It's like your body's going to revert back to the habits that it's known for the time. Like, because you get in those moments and your brain is not like, oh, remember what I thought last week. It's like, what's my brain been doing for 9 months? Yeah. How's my brain been operating for 9 months? And that's what I see with Lamar Jackson. It was interesting. I saw him come into the season because he made that big push to get skinnier. Yeah. And for whatever reason, whether he wanted to be faster or lighter, he felt too heavy or banging on his body, whatever. But I watched him play, and he was very thin, in the Chiefs versus Ravens game. Yeah. I literally saw him and was like, man, he's like thin, like way thinner. But you start to see how he's playing now, and you're like, okay, he's settling into it. Yeah. He put in that work in the off season. He's settling into it. He's getting the feel. It's like new body, new arm, new elasticity, whatever. So I'm curious to see how it shakes out. I'm still riding with the Chiefs until somebody shows they can pull them off. But eventually somebody else will win, and I won't be surprised if it's somebody like that.
He's been balling.
Yeah, I will not be surprised. So NBA, it's opening week right now. Whoo! We're going to see an interesting NBA season. You have LeBron James and his son playing on the same team.
Bronny.
Let's go. You have Jokic is back, 3-time MVP. Giannis and Dame want to have something to say. The Knicks basically have the Villanova team plus Cat Towns now. You have Jimmy Butler. You've got Anthony Edwards, who's paired with Julius Randle now. So many good teams. Not even mentioning the Shai Gilgeous-Alexanders and the Oklahoma City Thunder. You got Ja Morant back. It's going to be an interesting year. I can't even. Then the Celtics, the defending champions, they returned their whole team. It's going to be just the talent to me is just off the charts. You guys have guys who can dribble, who can score, who can defend, who can do all these things. And, hopefully people stay healthy. I always pray people stay healthy. But what do you foresee in the NBA season? It's even so hard to guess who could be at the top of the food chain in each conference.
Yeah. And that's the thing. All these players are so good now. They just keep improving. And once again, I think it's definitely the Steph Curry effect. Mm-hmm. Obviously, we're in a huge three-point shooting NBA now. You're either going to the basket or you're shooting the three. And then I think there's just so many more versatile players now. It's a completely different game. Yeah. We used to have really big players. Now we got smaller players who can cover every position, 3-and-D players who can ball handle, they can pass. I think it's just an NBA where everybody can do everything, and it just makes the league better. Yeah. So for me, I'm excited to see how it's going to go. Obviously, we're excited. I'm excited for my Lakers. I'm also excited to see how keep forgetting how to say his name is Connect.
Dalton Connect.
Yeah. I'm excited to see how he does. As well as Bronny. Mm-hmm. Bronny's been a slow burn, and I've said that before. He's going to take time to grow. But I'm excited to see how Connect's going to do. I'm excited to see how the rest of the league's going to do.
Yeah. Who would you say right now, if you had to pick Western Conference champion, Eastern Conference champion, who are you going with?
Nuggets.
And
I don't know. East is rough. Bucks,
huh? Over Celtics and Heat and.
I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued to see what Giannis does.
Yeah.
Especially with Dame, they still have an interesting relationship that they're trying to balance, two superstars together. But I think it's time for them to make that move again.
Okay. I'm going to say Celtics Timberwolves.
Okay.
Celtics Timberwolves. I do believe. I think the Celtics are going to hit a stride right now.
Yeah.
I think people are underestimating how good that team is, and I think they hit some rocky space in the last season because they would like blow teams out, and like every team at every level, whoever does that, like occasionally you get caught slipping, and then like, oh shoot, you know, you get rocked off. But they were so talented, and the thing is, they've got defenders. Like it's not just a team loaded with offense that we can run you off the court, you know, offensively. They've got one of the best defenders in the league, Andrew Holiday. Yeah. Like, Derek White is all-around team guy, and he's like the sixth man. Yeah. And you've got Kristaps Porzingis, who's 7'3". You've got Jason Tatum, who's like 6'11", 6'10". Jaylen Brown was an MVP multiple times. Yeah. And this dude who could shoot coming off the bench. Like, Al Horford, like, there's no holes in the team, and they just won. So that kind of confidence coming back, like, it's going to be interesting to see them play. But I think the Celtics will make it back to the NBA Finals. And I just have this feel like the Western Conference is crazy. Like there's so many good teams, and any given night somebody can knock somebody off. And I'm not necessarily saying Minnesota will be the first seed coming out of the playoffs, but I would like to see Anthony Edwards go take that next step. And I think Julius Randle has more of that dog mentality in him even than Cat Towns. I thought Cat Towns was a good player, obviously, but I thought there was something missing there in crunch time. And I think Julius Randle, like coming off of injury, leaving New York, having that hunger. And Minnesota's long. You know, they've got a lot of long players. They've got great defenders.
Big.
Yeah, and just Anthony Edwards, like, he had a really big summer playing with the Olympic team, training. Hopefully there's a level of maturity that comes in there. So he might be another year away or 2 years away. Yeah. My feeling with the Nuggets is I feel like their window passed when they got knocked off. I thought they were right there, like champions, and they had the opportunity to repeat, and then they just, like kind of fell off. Because you look at what happens psychologically to you when you get in those close games and you develop an MO, right? Yeah. Like a team develops an MO of this is how we play at the end of the games, or like teams fear us when we get in Game 7. And for them to go up by 20 points in that Game 7 against Minnesota on their home floor and let Minnesota come back and take it from them, and now they add Russell Westbrook, who traditionally hasn't been great, you know, for teams who are trying to win championships. I just have a feel like Jokic is going to be great. You know, he's going to be great. And Jamal Murray, I think, will be good. And Aaron Gordon will be good. But I feel like that window may have just passed. You know, I could be wrong, but I do feel like Anthony Edwards is going this way. And I feel like the Nuggets are starting to slide the other way a little bit.
The Russell Westbrook effect, man, that's been a thing. I don't know. I think, as far as Russell, I think Russell's a good player. Yeah. I just think he should have been definitely coming off the bench more times than he ended up in the starting lineup. Yeah. I think you only put him in the starting lineup if you absolutely have to.
I agree.
And he's a proven quality player off the bench.
I agree. And I feel like he's a spark plug, but I think just people in the NBA, again, you deal with the perception thing, right? They dealt with it with Carmelo Anthony. Yeah. Like, people forget that press conference when he switched to the Rockets where he's like talking to this guy in the back, like, hey, they want me to come off the bench. Like, it's just it becomes too much of a taboo thing, and it's distracting to a franchise. Yeah. Like we were just talking about with these other sports, camaraderie is so important. So if you have somebody who, and I will say Russell Westbrook, I do believe is in a space in his career where he probably has switched over to like, hey, whatever you guys need me for, I'm here. Yeah. I believe that mine probably switched because I don't believe it was the case with the Lakers. I think with the Lakers, it was like this is annoying and I should be starting, and it became this taboo thing, which is why it broke. And then in the Clippers, he was supposed to be in with the Hardens and the Paul Georges and them, but then they had all these injuries, and he went back to like, I got to take over. Yeah. But now with the Nuggets, I don't see a personality on that team who's gonna like, you know, get on the back of the neck and be like, when you come here, this is the way it's gonna be. Like Jokic seems very like playful, goofy. Jamal Murray seems like he's just kind of in his lane, and previously everybody just kind of played their role. There was no like, hey, this is our leader. Yeah. Like there's no, this is Jordan or this is Magic. Yeah. It was like, hey, everybody just kind of plays their role. So with a person like Russell Westbrook, to not go back to that like, I want to fight and I want to amp up, you need a person who is like, listen, I'm going to keep you on, you know, the way Kobe used to do with the Lamar Odom, you know, types. Like, you need a person with that aura, and I don't think the Nuggets have that.
I wish he would have accepted that role at the Lakers. I was like, we can't have him start. I already knew when he came. I was like, we can't have him start. Like, he can't be, like, kind of wondering, like, if he's going to be closer to being the main guy, the number two. I was like, they need to tell him he needs to be our sixth man.
Right.
Because, and then the funny part is when he became our sixth man, he, like, doubled his scoring output. Like, he was more efficient. I was like, he needs to come off the bench for us so then, like, he can play without the starters and go do his thing.
Right. Yeah, you have a situation where you added a person to a team like that and they don't come in like already talking the talk. You feel like you got to convince them. Yeah. You're already too late in the NBA, in the men's league, because the players, you know, a lot of times are running the league. You know, it's grown men who make more than the coaches who are essentially trying to be instructed, you know, by a person.
Yeah, I mean, it's the ego. It's a lot of ego. Like, we're some of the best players in the world.
For sure.
I'm going to say and do what I want.
For sure. So, we're going to find out. NBA. So, if you had to say between your winners, what would you say?
To win the ship?
If you pick Bucks and Nuggets.
I'm still going Nuggets.
Nuggets.
Yeah, I'm behind Jokic.
Yeah.
Probably best overall big man ever.
Yeah, he's nice.
Yeah, I can't name another big man that's better than him in combining all aspects of the game. Rebounding, 3-level score, and assist man. Like, there's no other big man that you can name that's anywhere like him. You can name it in maybe the scoring and rebounding, maybe, but there's nobody on the assist side like him, period.
You're right.
What about you?
That's tough. I can see the Celtics repeating. I would like to see Minnesota win.
Yeah.
But I can see the Celtics repeating. I just have a feel right now, like, Jason Tatum is coming off of feeling disrespected over the summer, not playing at the Olympics after winning last year, getting over that hump. So when you win, I know what it's like. Like, you win, the confidence goes to a new level. Yeah. Like, you go from, like, oh, I hope we win, like, oh, I'm so excited to win. Yeah. And then next year you're like, okay, now I know how to do it. Now I know how to do it. Regularly. Y'all are in trouble. Yeah. Like, I know how to pace myself. I know what's coming. I know the feelings. Like, oh, you're in trouble. But and there's just so many good players around him. I'd feel different if they had to, like, change out 3 players. Like, the Nuggets had to, like, get rid of Bruce Brown and add this person when they went. They literally return, like, the first 8 players are, like, all back and slotted.
He's smart, though. I was watching that show you were talking about.
Starting 5?
Yeah, and I was seeing, and they were, like, kind of showing him on the court because you can obviously hear him and everything. They connected a mic to him. And I was like, it was like towards the end of the game, he walks over to Al Horford, and everybody knows Al Horford's been in the league like over 15 years. And he was like, hey, so do we do this on the play or do we do this? And Al Horford was like, we do this on the play. And then I was like, that's a lot of humility there to be like, you're like one of the top 5-10 players in the NBA, and then you go and have a conversation with a veteran. That was huge for me. And because you don't usually see that. Usually you would see him going over to Al Horford like, this is what we're going to do.
For sure.
And he asked Al Horford because Al Horford's been around forever.
Yeah.
Which was huge.
That's a savvy pickup for you because in the same show, Anthony Edwards, and this shows a little bit of the immaturity. Yeah. Leadership, but immaturity. Like, Mike Conley's been in the league for a while. Yeah. And Anthony Edwards had this play where he literally said this in the timeout. He goes, what's that play called where you give it to me on the elbow?
Oh, I remember that.
Play.
Yeah.
He goes, what's that play called where you give it to me on the elbow? Run that play.
Yeah.
So I can do this. Yeah. Type of situation. It's like it's cool that you're trying to lead, but it shows that immaturity of like you don't even know what the plays are called. Like, how are you gonna be like leader guy when you're like, you know, I don't take it that seriously. I don't film study. I don't like play study. I'm just a hooper. You know, like, people aren't winning with that mentality. But again, all the people who've ended up being great, none of them come in the league and you want LeBron, Magic, Kobe. None of them come in the league and win year 1, year 2. Like, hey, you know, I'm in. Let's win. You know, it takes that maturity. Kobe Bryant was coming in like acting crazy, you know, playing crazy. LeBron came in playing great, but like didn't have the savvy of how to bring up like the JJ Bareas of the world and the
bring up the rest of the team.
Yeah,
with you.
That way. And not JJ Barea. What was his point guard's name? Dellavedova. Matthew Dellavedova?
There was Dellavedova, and there was the other guy, the light-skinned guy.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. But that's the situation. So we're going to find out. So You got Nuggets. I've got Celtics repeating. We'll see. All right, women's college volleyball. It's interesting. It's getting closer to the playoffs, which is where people start watching, when the Final Four bracket or the brackets come out. But Pitt, finally caught their first loss. SMU has been tearing people up this year. They've caught a lot of upsets this year.
Yeah, I think they're top 15, trying to get in the top 10 right now. Yeah. So every team's competitive.
Yeah, they've been tearing people up. So,
no doubt.
But it's tough in women's game. Big dogs generally win out and make it to the Final Four. So right now, who do you have as your Final Four predictions?
For sure, Pitt.
Okay.
Penn State. And then Wisconsin, Nebraska.
Okay.
Those are my squads that I'm looking
Big
at
dogs.
right now.
I'm curious if Pitt can get over the hump this year. I mean, they've been playing the best. They've been to a couple Final Fours, I think 3 in a row.
Yeah.
Haven't been able to get over the hump, but we'll see.
Also depends on how you play. You know how that goes.
That's the thing. It's one and done. It's not series.
Yeah.
What we're talking about these NBA things is I'm getting my mentality off series. Who can outlast? Who can learn from their previous mistakes? NCAA, I know. I consider myself a master of the NCAA tournament.
Yeah.
It is one and done. If you're not pre-prepping, laying out the game plan in advance, all positions, and having conversations, it's tough. Because one team catches fire for 2 sets, it's done.
You'll lose.
It's done. You might have the perfect block set up, perfect defense. If one girl's just it don't matter,
I'm just scoring.
It's done. It's done.
Scoring anyway.
It does not matter. Sometimes there's nothing you could do. So if you can't impose your will as a team early, it's a coin flip. You start getting these 4 and 5 setters, it's a coin flip. In those first couple rounds, you got to come in and catch rhythm and stomp it out for sure.
You got to come in high. You can't be slow at all.
For sure. I want to see Stanford make a run. I watch Cami Minor, and she's such a talented player. I'd like to see them make a run. They need to be a little bit more physical in some areas. Yeah. I'd like to see them make a run. We'll find out.
I'm intrigued.
We'll find out. So, all right, moving on. We want to go into dating now. So for the audience, this is our first time entering the relationships part of this podcast, and it's a great opportunity to lead in with this. So first dates is what we're going to talk about, kind of the transition from how things were in the 80s, how things were in the 2000s, how things are now. So typically, in your experience, how are dates generally initiated now, a first date? How do people get connected with other people, and how do they go on about trying to check out a date?
I think it's interesting because pre 2020, it was more of your maybe personal relationships, your friendships, your going out, things like that. I think that was how a lot of people ended up meeting, ending up on the first date, social events, especially college and then a little bit after college. But I think now that we're past 2020, I think most of it's dating apps, or it's Instagram or something like that. And then I think occasionally, if you are being social enough, you are going out enough, then you're going to meet through friends. What about you?
I had no idea. I'm not involved. I sit here all day. So if you have the situation you said, if you have dating app situation, or you have online situation, how does that even get initiated? How do those things work? How does a online dating app work? You have a situation where there's 2 people who are on the app, they click for what they like, they type in what they like, they type in about who they are, and then they match, or whatever the case. And so after the match happens, how do people meet up? How does that initiation start to go generally? And we're speaking broad spectrum here. What do you see out in the world?
I think generally it's just can you get past that, I guess, the conversation phase into maybe exchanging communications or whatever that ends up being, right?
Yeah.
Whether that's a phone number or social media or something like that, and then getting into the date. So I think it just depends on kind of how they're flowing, and then also the interest level as well.
Yeah. What I watch is basically, I'm going to keep this from 18 to 40, obviously kids have their situation of how they meet, generally school and friends and that kind of thing. But if you look at kind of the 18 to 40, what I'm seeing today, like you said, is a lot of the original contact happens through the phone. So people don't have to deal with that original challenge of the approach.
The approaching,
right?
Yeah.
The approach is the thing that's kind of started to sift its way out.
The approach is kind of dead.
And do you think there's pros or cons to that, or both? Like, what in your opinion did the approach era, we'll call it, have to create for a person to initiate? For me, it's the approach creates that original feeling in somebody's stomach of like, I'm nervous.
Yeah.
I don't know how this is going to go. The people who are nervous about rejection, the people who aren't confident about acceptance, like, what am I going to say after? Once I intro it, where will I go from here? Like, a lot of people stir that up in their brains, and it's why people hesitated on the approach, or why they didn't approach at all, or they'd set up the approach and then go away from it, or be awkward in the moment. And the receiving of the approach, like, there's a skill in that too, and usually from male to female, but sometimes on the flip, like, there's a skill in being able to gently, tell somebody you're not interested without, like, being awkward or being mean or being whatever the case. Where I'm a person who doesn't mind if one person approaches another individual and their intention is to try to create some kind of connection or relationship. I don't mind somebody being straight up and down and going like, I'm not interested.
Yeah.
But a lot of people get their feelings hurt by that, and a lot of people get nervous about hurting somebody else's feelings that way. So what is your opinion of the approach?
I think it's definitely disappearing. Like, I think it very in the future, it's literally going to be almost not happening at all. I also think it's because of kind of the way that the laws have been moving as well. Like, people are becoming very uncomfortable with strangers approaching them, and people are like suing and all this other stuff. So it's also making it worse. And then obviously with the 2020 situation, like, nobody was really able to do anything, and that kind of like brought it down even more. I think there's, to a certain extent, positives to it. Like, if you're interested in someone, you go up and talk to them, and you express your interest, and I think that's good for personal confidence. But also the other side of it is, do you want to potentially end up getting in trouble for it, right?
Right.
Just because we're in the U.S., everybody's sue happy here, so if somebody doesn't like you approaching them or saying something to them, they can make it a problem for you. Right?
Yeah. So if you have a situation where somebody, and you see this, I imagine, pretty often, somebody is in a public space and there's somebody who they'd like to approach, somebody who they'd like to inquire about, or even like meet for the first time, people will literally see that person, go back door, find a way to get their information, whether that's through social, whether that's through a friend, whether that's through like another contact, reach out to them after that in hopes to like reconnect. That for me is where it's like, it's too much. So I'm a person who I must live in the times in terms of I consult a lot of people, I interact with a lot of people, I see a lot of youth and adults on a daily basis, and so I get a lot of sample size of stories, of watching, whatever the case. But if I had an issue with like the way things are now, it's where people have lost. I believe that part is really important. I believe the beginning of showing I'm willing to put myself in an uncomfortable situation for the potential of this working out. That concept right there is important in business relationships and sports. No risk equals limited reward. So if a person goes, hey, there's this person across the way who I would want to reach out to, but instead of reaching out, I'm going to ask 10 other people around, hey, you know who that is? You know what their Instagram is? Or you know what their blah, blah, blah is? Or like how to get in touch? Or like, let me go try to stalk them later and then get in touch. I believe those situations, while I'm sure they work out sometimes, that takes away a little bit of the confidence that should be gained from, okay, I want to do this. Let me amp myself up. Let me get prepped. Okay, let's go. I'm going to do it. I'm in. I'm there now. There's no going back. That part I think is very important just to developing confidence, because in the long run, a human being that you're with, you want to feel about them that they're a confident person and they could stand on their own 2 feet while being a part of the partnership. And vice versa, and I do believe like a little bit gets lost in that. It's not that confidence can't be developed as you go or in other ways, and that's like a deal breaker. But for me, like that part would be really important. I wouldn't like it, if somebody ever in my life previously had reached out to me after like literally I saw them see me, especially if it was multiple times, and then like they reached out like a different way, knowing they were gonna see me to like connect, I would like question about it. I'd be like, why didn't you just pull up?
There's the funny part. There's the other way where they'll like find you on social media, right? And they'll see you in real life and act like they don't know you.
Exactly. Yeah. And there's people. There's people who do connect like that. Like, they're talking a whole lot and shouting out and go back and forth. But in real life, it's like we never met type situation.
Exactly.
Those situations you got to be weary about for sure. For sure. That's funny. Okay, so if we look back to like the 2000s, this is 24 years ago. It's a while. Like, what were things like in terms of like creating a first date as best you can remember? Remembering that this was the time there was no smartphone. So there was no video messaging. There was no iMessage text. Like texting was like brand new in what? We're talking 2021, 2022 is right around when texting first started coming out.
Well,
internet came out in 1991.
There was still texting in like we'd say probably like maybe early like 2000s.
Yeah.
So there was text messaging, but not everyone really had like a phone yet.
Right.
Like I think I got my first phone when I was like in middle school. I think I was like 12 or 13 years old when I got one, and there was texting and stuff, which was like I think 2003 or something like that.
It's tough though. Like in the 90s, it was like AOL Instant Messenger, and then like you hit the 2000s, and it was like brick phone or like the flip phone was popping,
and
or like the sidekick,
the Nokia, and then the sidekick.
Like people who had the sidekick, I was like, that's game right there. Anybody who had a sidekick, you were like, okay, you already know what the situation is with them.
I got a sidekick too. That was hilarious.
I bet you did.
Nah, it was back in the day. It was like it was straight. It was relationships, and then it was approaching. Yeah, like that was what it was. Like it was either friend group or a friend group of a friend group, and then it was like hype up, go approach. Right. Like that was literally it. Right. You get hyped up by the crew, and then you just go and talk to them.
For sure. Like to where you could see it coming. Yeah. Like 4 people huddled around.
Yeah.
No, just go do it. Yeah. Just go do it. The other person's like kind of waiting on you, type situation for sure. Remember the days. That's funny. That's funny. All right, then taking it back to the 80s. This is before you and I were born. So if we look back in the 80s, like, what do you imagine the scene was like? This is before cell phones. This is before internet. Like, there's none of it. There's like a home phone.
I think that was, from what I remember, that's like the parent stuff. I think that was like 100, like basically 100% like approach.
It's either approach or it's like a friend approach.
Of a friend. Yeah, you
friend
get the
approach.
Note or like
hey, such and such likes you. Yeah, that's funny. And then the home phone. People staying up. You remember the era? People staying up an hour and a half, 2 hours talking on the home phone, and like people on the like every phone in the house is on the same line. So if somebody picks up the phone, they're on your call.
Conversation.
They're on your call.
I'm in your conversation.
Yeah. So you pick up the phone, and then mom or dad or brother might pick up the phone, and like you hear click on. Yeah. It's like. I'm on the phone type of situation. Hey, you need to get off the phone. It's like past your bedtime. You need to do your homework.
What about the initial? Funny. What about the initial phone call, and then dad or brother?
Yeah, hey, may I talk to whoever? May I talk to such and such? Like, who is this calling?
Yeah, who are you?
Who is this?
It was like, stop calling my phone.
Exactly. Hung up, buddy. And like for people, it was the biggest deal to have their own line. Like the people who had their own phone line in their room, like that was like the move.
That was when they were like they created the second line in the house. It was like I got my own.
The older sister, the older brother, like I got my own line type situation. Like so, I'm talking to whoever I want to talk to, but only at home in my house, setting plans. That is too funny. They need to bring those times back. That needs to be like a game show. It's like where people have to live like it was then. You know, they don't get cell phones like. You got to go do what you do during the day, and it's like you got to figure out the connections through like home phone calling, but it's like families. Yeah. It's like families who sign up. So it's like a minimum of 3 kids. So it'd be like 2 sisters and a brother, or 2 brothers and a sister, or 3 boys, whatever. Yeah. It's like 6 families that have multiple kids. And the parents aren't really in it, but the families have to live together in houses. Yeah. But they're like trying to find a love connection or whatever, like they do on the shows. That'd be comedy if they're like, we're taking y'all back.
It was.
y'all got 1 month or 2 months. Like y'all got to live like this. No cell phones. That'd be wild.
I better make it happen.
For real, that'd be wild.
It's like that dating show where they talk behind the walls.
Mm-hmm.
You know what that's called?
No.
Love is Blind. Yeah. I've been hearing about that.
Man, yeah, I had to jump out of the show situation after 2022. And if you know, you know. All right, so shifting to the final piece for today's podcast, savings and investing. So I'll let you lead it off. What topics do you think are important for us to address with the people today, and how can we help them?
Well, I'm actually going to start with the saving into the debt.
Okay.
So I hear a lot of people talking about you should just start paying off your debt and then not really have a savings. And I think it should be the opposite.
Okay, explain.
Well, you hear a lot of gurus, they'll talk, oh, you need 500, you need 1,000, blah, blah, you need this, you need that, and then you want to start paying off the debt. I'm like, you should be saving. I think you should be saving more. I think you should save 5. I think you should save 10 if it's not going to take you forever.
This is 10K?
Yeah.
Okay.
Save it. So then you've got money, you've got a cushion, and then you start paying off debt. Because the first thing that's going to happen if you don't have any money in savings is you're just going to go back into debt, right? So I'm like, save some money first, a light cushion. Maybe that is $3,000 to $5,000 or whatever, and then go pay off your debt. And then if you hit a rough patch, you go into the savings. You're not running up your credit card. You're not trying to get a personal loan. You're not trying to do this. You're not trying to do that. And then you just pay off your debt. And then once you pay off your debt, you build up your savings account more.
So asking the questions for the people who listen to this who might have this question in their head. So let's say somebody goes, okay, KJ, that sounds like a good plan. My debt is going to be there either way. I'm going to save, 3, 5, 10, 7K, whatever. I'm going to save to where I feel comfortable. I could run into almost any emergency at whatever age I'm at, and I feel like I'm pretty good unless it was catastrophic.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not going to have to go back into debt. Now, for you, does that ideology differentiate based on the percentage of debt or compounding versus not compounding? So if you're in a situation where you have, round number, $30,000 in debt.
Yeah.
30K. And that 30K stays 30K over 5 years versus that 30K over 1 year becomes 31K. And then over 2 years becomes 35K. And then over 3 years becomes 39 or 40K.
Yeah.
What would you say in that situation? The same or different?
I'm still pretty similar about it. I'm like, you need to save up something like how much you would make or how much you'd spend in a month. That should be enough to give you a comfortable financial cushion for you to then start going after the debt. So for me, I kind of did a similar thing where I was like, okay, I'm going to be okay with the debt kind of moving maybe over a year to 3 years, because I know once I get to my saving point, I'm going to now send all of that money towards the debt. So I'm going to be making way higher payments than whatever the minimum. If the minimum was 100, I'm going to be paying $300 a month, and I'm going to be closing the distance on that and then trying to roll that in. So for me personally, I definitely like to have the cushion first, so then I don't jump into $0 if something financially hits me and I'm not in a good position.
Okay. Where I'm shaping it, for me, that situation would definitely depend on interest amount. If I have a situation where, heaven forbid, I owed $50,000 for something, if I knew within 2 years $50,000 is going to turn into $60,000, there's no way for me I'm going to let another $10K in debt add on before I'm working as hard as I can to get that number scratched down, even if I have to go to bare bones. That's me. However, if there was a situation where I knew that the debt doesn't become way bigger, 50 becomes 50,500 over 2 years.
I mean, over COVID.
I'm not tripping on that.
Student loan situation.
Exactly.
Where they stopped it.
So where I want to go with this is, this would be a lesson for me of people who are listening, is starting to have an understanding of what things that you would basically create a debt for yourself.
Yeah.
What things that you would create a debt for yourself turn into appreciating assets versus what things are depreciating. So if I have a scenario where I'm all right, I have a car purchase that I want to make.
Yeah.
For me, I'm at a space where I would not at this point go into having a car payment again. I've understood what that's like. I understand the people who choose that, why they choose it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do it again, simply because when I was a kid, my mom drilled into me, like I almost had to hear this probably twice a week for my whole childhood. Christopher, cars depreciate in value. The moment you drive it off the lot, it does da-da-da-da-da-da. And so anybody out there who's like, look, I've worked hard, I've done my thing, I want to get, a specialty car that I like, I respect that. Go do your thing. Because I have family members who are retired literally, who the rest of their life is kind of set up for what they want to do, and they drive Toyota Echo.
Yeah.
And with the handheld window rolled down, still in 2024. And I have a situation where I have family members who the moment they got to their first bag from their dermatologist business or whatever the case, they went and got Range Rover, Mercedes, and, golf cart, all 1 year, blah, blah, blah. And myself, for example, now I used to drive only Toyotas. Like, I was always raised on, like, Toyota's a good car, it'll last you, miles, da-da-da-da. So my first car was a Toyota RAV4. My second car was Toyota, was it? I had one car before the Prius. No, that wasn't Toyota. That was a Buick. I had a Buick that was like, it was like a $2,000 car because my Toyota Prius got totaled. Yeah. And so like I had the Buick that was already on like 150,000 miles. Like it wasn't gonna last very long. But then I had a Toyota Prius. That was a 2009. Yeah, 2009. And then when I didn't have that anymore, I got another Toyota Prius in 2015. And then now I have the Tesla.
You're forgetting about the accent.
Oh, that Hyundai Accent. That was my first car, was my second car after Toyota RAV4. You're right. Yeah, my grandpa got me that. So when I got my Toyota RAV4 on my 16th birthday, I got my used Toyota RAV4, and I ended up totaling it coming back from In-N-Out Burger. I fell asleep at the wheel and jumped the curb and ran into the tree, totaled it. And I didn't have a car for like 3 months. Yeah. And I was getting ready to go into the middle of my senior year in high school. And my grandfather, he went to CarMax in Fort Worth, and he spent $9,000 on a Toyota Accent and sent it to me. And he said, like, you got to pay it back, but it doesn't matter. The Hyundai Accent? Yeah, it doesn't matter like what time you pay it back, but you got to pay it back. And so I was working at In-N-Out Burger and just hitting them, probably every month until I got paid off. Yeah. And so I drove that Accent. Like when I met you, I was driving that. I moved to Long Beach, drove that down.
For a while. That was a while. You have it like for what, over 5?
Probably 4 years. 4 years. Like I had that probably all the way through LBCC. I had that my first year at Irvine, maybe even my second year at Irvine. Yeah, I did have that for a while, about 4 years. And then I think when I left Irvine, I didn't have that anymore. When I went overseas. I'm trying to think when I first started working at USC. But yeah, and then I was all Toyotas after that. So Prius, and now I drive the Tesla. And the whole reason I got the Tesla was like trying to save on their gas. Yeah. Like that was the whole reason I got the Tesla. And I'm going to drive that till they can't drive anymore.
Well, you already know I'm a fortune teller, so I already called out the Tesla years ago.
That did happen.
I was like, you're going to get that Tesla, right? Because you don't like gas.
For sure.
You were already mad about the Prius situation. I was like, bro, you're already getting like 40, 50 with the Prius, and you were mad about filling up the Prius.
Yeah, I was like, I'm not trying to go to the gas station ever. I'm not trying to see a gas station.
I was like, you're going to get the Tesla. I was like, eventually you're going to get it because you have to. Like, you're not trying to do it.
I had to make that move.
I get it.
For sure.
I don't know. I'm more of like, I've actually never had a car payment.
Right.
And that's because my dad was like, just get this car, like, without the payment. And I wanted to get a car with a payment. He was like, just get the car without the payment. So I've actually never had a car payment. So I just basically put everything into repairs and decide what I want to drive and just drive without a payment, which is really nice.
Yeah.
But
it's nice that I have that over your head. My only payment was like when I had to pay back my grandfather. Yeah. Like consistently on that. So it was like a payment to a family member type situation. So anyway, point being with that is if you have a depreciating asset, I wouldn't decide to like create a debt, right? Yeah. It's like wait until literally if you gotta ride the bus, bike, whatever, you wait until you have the cash to be able to pay for it because it's just gonna burn a hole in your pocket type situation. But if there's things that will appreciate, so houses have the ability to appreciate, but then there's like more research you can do on like what appreciates. Like jewelry is not always a bad option. You know, people who talk about like, oh, that jewelry is gaudy and it's this and that and the third. It's like if you can find things that'll potentially appreciate or be worth more or have some like value, whether it be gold, whether it be diamonds, whether it be really clean silver, Yeah. Like, there's an opportunity to even potentially go into some light debt there if it's not going to be, like, compounding debt. If you have a situation where you might have some art that you go into, but something that can appreciate, it's not a terrible idea to decide on your debt that way and then go into the savings. But essentially the way I would run the percentage for anybody who is asking is I would say never put yourself in a situation where you have less than 6 months savings for your life and then decide to go into a debt. Like, you only decide to go into a debt if you already have the 6 months savings into your life. So that's where you and I are like lockstep on the whole savings concept.
Oh, 100%.
If you don't look at your life and not, let me go bare minimum. The life you live right now, 6 months minimum, and then I don't touch it. Now let me save 6 months and then let me start chewing away at it. Yeah. Let me save 6 months, put that somewhere where I don't look at it or don't touch it or don't like, should I like risk it in the stock market? Should I do this? Should I do that? You don't touch it. Yeah. And then you can start making your moves with everything else. For some people, that's hard. But the move that I would want to talk about next is how to even go about that concept. So this is my thing that isn't spoken about enough in the financial game is what should you do to try to start allocating this? Like, some people have the mentality, which here's where this mentality is fine for me. It's okay for me if you make a decision to be the type of person who's like, I want to work all the time and I want to try to scrape it up and I want to get the bag per se. Or if you're the type of person who's like, I want work-life balance and I don't want to work that much and I want to know my exact hours and what I'm doing. So the issues that I have are the people who are new to the game who come in like, well, I want to work not very much. I want to make a whole lot and then I want to just choose my time. I think, one, that's not even sustainable. But two, that's how you're going to run yourself into a problem like very, very fast with like the reality of how the world works in terms of like your finances staying. And then two, the people who just have disorganization. Like they work and they grind all the time, but then they don't organize.
They spend everything.
You're going to be in that loop, that hamster wheel for life. Yeah. So being able to put yourself in a situation where you're like myself, I choose, I'm going to grind so hard. Like I'll go from 4 a.m. to 11 at night. If I got to do it 6-7 days, I'll do it. One, because I really love my job. But even if my job is just so-so, I'll do it and I'll crank it so that I can set myself up for if a day comes where I didn't want to do that, I'd have that option. Yeah. Like, or I could be in the situation where I'm like, look, I don't want to crank it. I don't want to crush it. I want to work, use a round number. I want to work 25 hours a week. And I don't want to work, 3 days of those weeks. But if I'm going to do that, my lifestyle has to match it.
It has to fit it.
It has to match it. So that's where people start playing is like, well, I want a vacation and I want to gallivant and I want to be out at the club. So that's why I can't do this and that. It's like, you're going to work 25 hours and then vacation and be at the club and drive all around the country and eat out. That doesn't make any kind of sense.
That's
like,
that. All that sounds like that.
That don't make any kind of sense. Like I guarantee you're swiping credit cards.
100%.
So you have to put yourself in a situation that makes sense. So based on that, like job decisions should be chosen based on first that answer. Like, do I want to be in one of those two boats? Because to me, there's not boat 3 and 4 that I said before. Boat A is I want to grind and work and crush it and go hard because I really like doing what I do and I get social interaction there. I get my workouts or whatever. Or boat B is like, look, I don't want to crush it like that, but I'm going to make sure if I'm not crushing like that, my lifestyle makes sense. Yeah. So I'm eating at home, I'm cooking. I find a way to get my ancillary stuff for less or maybe even free. Like I find a way to like train myself to work out rather than getting a trainer for X amount of dollars. Or I'm going to put myself in a situation where I have a food budget and I'm going to spend $150 a week on food as opposed to $700 a week on food. Just throwing out round numbers. But all this boils down to something you and I both do, and that is spreadsheeting. Like being able to maintain a spreadsheet where
Excel,
because
anything.
Again, like the issue people run into is they're trying to do all this off the top of their head. Is they go like, well, no, I know what I'm bringing in. I know what I spend. I know. It's like, you do not.
No.
You do not. Because even the people who live bare minimum and do this at the highest level, they couldn't peg the number. No. And there's so many surprise things. There's so many surprise things people aren't paying attention to. Like yesterday, I'm just coming off of like a light sickness. And yesterday I had to go and I paid for a Z-Pack and like an inhaler type thing to get rid of whatever. And every time I go and I get a subscription, sometimes it's free, sometimes it's like $25, and there's been times it's like $120. Yeah. And so when it's $120, I say thanks but no thanks. But if I go like yesterday and they say, oh, it's $28, and I like look online because Mark Cuban's got his thing now of like drugs for whatever, like the real cost of drugs, I'll go look and do a comparison. And I go, okay, this checks out type situation. I'm like, okay, that's like an unforeseen thing. Like, I'm not budgeting for Z-Packs. Like, I budget for, like, big major sickness, like in an emergency fund, but I'm not budgeting for, like, Z-Packs, you know, type situation, because that's not every month for me. So,
but I think it's just that situation of, once again, everybody wanting everything, right? Like, me and you will work 7 days a week. Like, I'm not on yours. I'm definitely not 4 a.m. to 11, but I definitely am like a 7 a.m. to maybe 8 p.m. or 10 p.m. on some days, but I do work the same deal 7 days a week. So I'm willing to grind it out so I make sure that I'm comfortable financially. And that's what I always wanted. I was somebody who never wanted to worry about money. So I grind it out. But there are a ton of other people I know, they're like, I want 2-3 days off during the week. And I'm like, okay, like, but how do you afford that lifestyle? Because I'm looking around and I'm like, you got a lot of stuff. I'm like, you got the car, you got the nice apartment. You told me you're going to 2 weddings for your friends this year. Like, there's a lot of different things that they're like, yeah, I'm going to do all this stuff. And I'm like, it doesn't sound like you work enough to financially be able to take care of that.
Right.
And so does your financial situation fit that? And for us, like, we work every single day, so we probably have a bigger window of like what we can have in our lives. But even then, like, my lifestyle is very, very cheap. So when I want to do stuff, I never worry about doing it. I just go do it.
Right. And it's just working it backwards. And again, I'm past a place where I go, this recipe right here is the recipe for everybody. Kind of the way I set up my situations, whether it's when I do consulting, whether I'm doing favors, whatever the case is, I go, okay, I have these like 5 ways that it could be done. And like, you got to find the way that fits for you. So the way that I use for myself right now, present day, is I work it backwards. I go, let's say I wanted to live to be 100. Like, and that's aggressive. Like, most people don't live till they're 100. Let's say I wanted to live till I was 100. Let me map out exactly what would be necessary when I was 100. And then, I always do worst case scenario. Let's say inflation is crazy and I want to live in the most expensive state and this, down the third. That way, if it's something different, it's better. 100, 99, 98, 97. And I like work it backwards. And I go, okay, this is set for then, put it away, don't touch it. This is set for then, put it away, don't touch it. This is set, put it away, don't touch it. And I work it backwards until I hit my current age. And if I'm at my current age by that point, I go, now I got a decision. I got to either keep doing what I'm doing, keep trying to be helpful, you know, pick my moments, whatever. If I feel like crushing it, I'll crush it. Or if I literally want to let off the gas pedal and like retire, I could do that. But you have to have vision beyond 3 inches. Like, most people, it sucks to say, but it's most people, the high majority, are looking at 3 inches. They're like, my next paycheck is going to help pay for this private lesson that I want to do, this hair that I want to get done, these nails, this fix my car, whatever. And anytime you're looking at that next paycheck as something that's about to pay for something that's coming up, it's dangerous. Like, you're in a dangerous situation because catastrophe can hit, COVID can hit, layoff can hit, you know, circumstances can change, whatever. And this world is showing that. You got hurricanes that are going down. You got COVID that just happened. You got presidential stuff that's about to change. Taxes change. Location changes. Inflation changes. So the biggest messaging of this whole thing is like, make sure not only do you have a plan, but your plan is in motion.
100%. And I think the funny part is 2 major things that happened in the last 20, 25 years. 08 housing crisis. Ton of people lost their jobs across the country. Housing market went to crap. And then obviously 2020, nobody was expecting 2020 to happen. There was a lot of people I know who were like, went broke, didn't have any money. They hadn't saved any money from all those years of working. So, and the funny part is, like, you listen to rich people and they're like, I'm not saving. I wouldn't save $1. I'd invest everything. I was like, that's not actually true, because if you look around, there's a lot of people who buy houses all cash. You think they're not saving to do that? Like, how? So that's the part that gets me on that.
That's just not a fair concept for them to say. It's like, you might be putting all your dollars into investments and then running the mindset of like, well, anytime I want to, I'll just pull it out of investments and turn it into cash and go. But any rich person who tells you they're not saving any cash, that's not true, because they're literally going cash dollars under the mattress or in the safe. They're going cash in the bank that is being untouched and prepared to transfer to I got child support, I got my kid's school, my whatever the case, like that I could flip the script at any time. And then always the return on things that are coming. Some people have a situation where they're like, they have dividends. Once the dividends hit, they reinvest in the next thing. But people who are rich, like, there's always something that's coming in that they go, this gets shoveled off to this account or for this situation. And at any moment, there's a plan where they could turn it into cash at minimum. And that's really the thing that has to be made clear. It's like, people might listen to rich people and go, oh, you got to invest every single dollar. And it's like, that's not diversification of the portfolio. Part of diversification is making sure there's some cash on hand. You always have to have cash on hand.
You always have to have money. You
because,
always have
again,
to have liquid cash.
If emergency strikes, like, you need cash on hand.
Like, imagine that, not having anything. And you're like, I need money right now. And you're like,
nope,
it's all in real estate. I can't touch it.
It's all in real estate. It's all in retirement. It's all in something where you're about to get penalized if you take this out. Like, that's not good.
And that's what happened to everybody in 2020.
Right.
And that's what happened to everybody who was trying to buy houses. And that's what happened to everybody when inflation hit.
Yep.
They said, I think I was looking at the news, they were like, oh yeah, like there's the highest percentage of people reaching into their retirement right now.
Right.
Because of inflation.
Right.
Because of everything going up. Because they went and got that car that was supposed to be $40,000, but they bought it for $70,000. And now car values are going down. Like, it's all that little stuff. And it's like, okay, but we got to have discernment, right? Sure. Like, we got to be able to be, okay, I'm still going to save a certain amount. I'm not going to cash out on every single thing.
For sure.
And I think that's huge even for investing. Like, are we making sure we're investing the money?
For sure. All right, so right now, what would you say are the top 2 ways that you would recommend somebody invest and why?
The first one is obviously starting as soon as you possibly can. So, and even if that's something that I wish even I would have did when I was a lot younger, was literally just started investing like $10 a week, $20, something like that.
Yeah. Build the habit.
Yeah, just building the habit of doing it. But I did it a little bit later, and I did it with savings as well. But just starting to save something, and then obviously first and foremost putting that into S&P 500.
Yes.
Everybody knows you put your money in the S&P 500, that thing's gonna run.
Right.
But I think the other issue is that people are uncomfortable with seeing the flow of the stock market.
Yeah.
And the funny part about that is, I'm like, every single thing in your life is pretty much depreciating. It just doesn't have a price tag over it
that you're watching
24/7 while you're watching it. Yeah.
It's like a scale.
It's like putting on goggles in your house and seeing, you bought that TV for $1,000, but it's worth $200 now.
Right.
But because the stock market is something you can see consistently, people freak out about it. Which is why people also don't really know how much their cars depreciate unless they go and check. Right? So I think just forgetting about what's happening in the market, and people got to look away and just put the money in and let the money run.
Right.
So that's the first thing I'd say. And then for me personally, I'm on 2 different investing plans, and I think they're a little bit different than yours. But for me, I'm on a long term. So my long term is S&P 500. My short term is dividend investing stocks. So I buy only stocks that make dividends. They pay me out, whether it's every month, every quarter, every year, whatever that is. And then right now, I get money every single month just for having that money in that account. So for me, I want money now and I want money later. But I think at minimum, everybody's plan should be, I need this certain amount in savings. I like a year. You said at minimum 6 months. I like a year of savings, just because I've seen what happened in 2008 and how that affected my family, and I've seen what happened in 2020 and how that affected my family. I think you need at least a year of your income in savings, and then putting the rest of that into your retirement, your S&P 500, your target date, whatever that is, and then just making sure you kind of keep your eyes away from it and let it run.
Yeah. For me, I shifted everything right now. For the people who I consult on this, I shift everything into 5 pockets. So, and I work it backwards. I go furthest away, retirement. That's the thing that's unforeseen for most people. They don't really know how it'll look. Most people have an idea. Oh, I'd like to live like this, or I'd like to do that.
Yeah.
Like, you don't know. You don't know how the world will be. You don't know what the fads will be. You don't know what the trends will be. Like, so just starting to put things away for retirement. Second, that I call it a family and kids account. Like even a person like ourselves who doesn't have kids and we don't have wives and that kind of thing, preparing for if something like that is ever necessary. And that might be flip into, oh shoot, my parents are in trouble.
Yeah.
I got to get their back. My brothers and sisters are in trouble. I got to get their back.
Yeah.
So it's really like the people who were there, my blood, my closest friends, this is like if something goes wrong there, I don't want to have to pull out of what I do every day or have to say no.
Yeah.
So prepping for that. And that doesn't need to be a crazy amount because hopefully nothing $100,000 happens.
Yeah.
But like if I can go $10 a month, cool, that I would normally spend on some candy and water at the grocery store, like instead, I'm gonna do that. Boom. Number 3 is starting to look at emergency savings. So emergency savings, like you want to get it to that original spot, but then keep building on it. I don't believe in like, hey, well, let me just get my emergency savings and leave it. I'm like, keep pushing, because you don't know how big the issue is going to be. And as you get more successful, unfortunately, the issues become bigger too.
Get bigger and bigger.
And then worst case scenario, that can just get placed into retirement later. Number 2 is direct savings. So the things that I'm not touching now, but like I need to foresee. So, I want to potentially go on a vacation. If you're in a business, I want to build out a slot to be able to have a media guy. I want to be able to get this equipment, or I want to be able to, whatever. I want to go on a situation where I'm going to rent some boat to make this thing happen, this music video, and it might produce money or might not, whatever. That's like savings, like again, so I don't have to reach in my everyday. And then the everyday account, that's for things you are going to encounter on a daily basis. Like if I'm a person who buys waters at the grocery store, if I'm a person who has to run electricity, if I'm a person who has to pay for laundry, if you have a person who cleans your house, if you have whatever, like markers because you're an artist, like every day. And if you can slot it out in those 5 things and then calculate your percentages, what can you do? Like, and then everything has to go in reverse there. So I lay them out like that, and then the intro goes in the opposite order. So I go, okay, every day, what do I need? Let's say I make $1,000 a month, to use a round number. Okay, out of that 1,000, I know that in a month I'm going to spend 500 of it, even though that's like 50% is a lot for your life. But let's call it 500. Okay, 500's got to go in every day. And then what am I able to put in savings? You could probably put in 80. Okay, 580. All right, what could you put in emergency fund? My emergency fund isn't built yet, so if I put in $40 a month, okay, now I'm at 620. And then you just got to boom. Oh shoot, now family and friends, I only need to put in $50 there a month. Dang, that puts me a lot in retirement. Cool. Like, or hey, I know that I got this trip coming up. I got to add a little bit more to savings than 80. I got to start going 120 there. So to take money out of that retirement and shift it. And just boom. But you got to stay clockwork. People get like a little bit too out of their regimen and they go, all right, yeah, I'll have a plan. And after month 3, well, this month, I want to get that. I had a parking ticket. And it cost me $400. It's like parking tickets got to go from that savings account. Unfortunately, like as you're saving for the things that are about to happen in your life.
I don't think they're automating either. The issue is automation. Like most of my money that comes out, whether investing or saving, I have like 5 to 8 different things where the money comes out automatically into those places. And I don't think a lot of people are making sure they automate it.
For sure not. And so being able to have stuff, if I have an account, for example, if I had like, say I pay myself $100 a week, so say like money comes in from the business, money gets allocated. Like you have to pay your staff, you have to pay for the rent, you have to pay for the electricity, you have to pay for the system that books people, you have to pay for the fixes, the plumber, whatever. And then say you pay yourself $100 in a week. I pay myself $100 in a week. And I'll go, all right, 40 of that 100 goes straight into the emergency savings auto. Like it's literally $40 transfers, but I don't even have to touch it. So that's what he's talking about for the people who aren't privy to that. So we've given people a lot of ideas, a lot of stuff they could chew on. The wisest people have a pen and pad, and they are going, boom, I'm activating this today. If you really want to try to make it happen, if you really want to be able to do what you want to do, and feel the financial freedom type situation, that's the move. So, all right, music. You have any music you're listening to right now that's worth mentioning?
Rick Ross, Bag of Money.
Oh my gosh, I cannot wait until next week. Next week, we are going to start to bring in a new piece about music that I think you guys are gonna enjoy. Rick Ross, "Bag of Money" is the title to the song.
It's featuring T-Pain though. T-Pain really made the song.
T-Pain, he's got a good one with Glorilla right now. I love the girl, or I love her, or something like that. Like it's Glorilla and T-Pain, and his voice, I'll give it to him. His vocals on there, I'm like, this is dope.
Yeah.
His dope. Edited version though. Whew, that non-edited version is too much.
Yeah, I definitely want to go edited version, but T-Pain's the guy, and he made the song. If he wasn't in the song, I wouldn't even want to hear it.
Okay. And what's one more?
What am I thinking about right now? What have I been listening to? I don't know. I've been listening to a lot of like Rick Ross stuff right now. So
Rick Ross. So one more song from Rick Ross, people.
I'm Not a Star.
Okay. "A Bag of Money" and "I'm Not a Star." Rick Ross. Check him out. Rick Ross, T-Pain, if you guys want to hit us with the sponsorship and get on our show, let us know. But in general, where you can find us at Business Relationship Sports, CA and KJ. On YouTube primarily is where you'll find it. Hit the subscribe button if you liked it. Make sure to hit the like. That helps other people like yourself find it. And always be willing to drop a comment. Let us know what pieces of it you like. Talk to us. We'll talk back to you. The whole situation. So that is it for today. Enjoy your week, and we'll see you next time.
Deuces.